Since I'm doing a video on a tattoo machine which I bought off eBay, I apparently have to wear black nitrile gloves because that's what everybody who does tattoo videos wears. But having said that, they're not all that practical, so I think I'll just get them off because I'm just going to end up rather clammy inside. So this was a kit I bought from China, and it basically contains the tattoo machine, the power supply, and a random set of accessories, including the strange, like, rubber bands and all these grommets and things. I wasn't sure what I was going to be getting. I was quite tempted to go for another kit from a UK seller, which had two tattoo machines, a power supply that they show an actual, whereas this one shows a 2-pin plug, this one showed the 3-pin plug, suggesting it might be grounded power supply, which is good. Came with all different colours of inks, but the downside is that this one here, they wouldn't ship to the Isle of Man, as is so common, so, well, I guess it's the Chinese one after all. So the Chinese one, it turns out it's better because, as you'll see, while the other one looked as though it was just folded metal, this one is actually cast metal. It doesn't look anything like this picture here, but then they do allude to that in the description. They say you're going to get a sort of random machine. So let's take a look at this. I'll let you search for it yourself. I'm not going to encourage you all to get tattoo machines and tattoo each other, because that would be a bit messy. Oh, what the heck, I'll tell you where I got it from. What wears -FR? What wears -FR? I think one of the biggest clues here is if you type complete tattoo kit gun machine, and then they've spelt power POWFR. Supply colour ink cup. It's all very random selection of words. Anyway, here's what we get. A big box. A really big box, actually. And I'd forgotten. I didn't realise what this was when it arrived. I thought, what on earth is this? Because it's so heavy. So you get a mains lead with the 2-pin mains lead with the typical sort of Chinesey plug. You get this strange jack plug, a 1/4-inch jack plug on one end, just mono jack plug, and then this basically wires stuffed up then to springs with bits of heat shrink, and then these springy contacts. You get these little rubber grommets, which are, I believe they're called top hat grommets. You get a bottle of ink, which it's very nice that it's all a holographic label. It makes it look very professional, but the fact that the label's been put on upside down makes it look unprofessional. You get 3 Allen keys of different sizes, a packet of O-rings. Took me a while to work out what they were for. A packet of rubber bands. That's why I had to go and look at videos to see what the rubber bands for. These little caps, which are actually ink cups. The power supply, which is in a box with, it's not a very nice box. That looks like a label's been ripped off, but it's printed on. It's that sort of effect. The power supply is smart enough. And the first thing I did when I received this was I opened the power supply because it's not very big, it's not got much clearance inside, and it was rattling ominously with big blobs of solder inside. And we're talking about, this blob is 3mm by 4mm, almost 1/4 of an inch long, and when you see the clearance in this, removing these blobs of solder before using it was a very good move. We will be opening that later. We'll be taking everything to bits later, as we do. That'll include the foot pedal. The tattoo machine itself, now how stylish is that? That is so nice. I really like this. That it's sort of like, it's a cast metal frame with the sort of decorative coils on it and all the wee adjustables. It's quite nice. And it came with a selection of sealed disposable needles, which you're supposed to just use once. And it comes with the hand grip, comes with the needle, and I initially thought that the needle was just a spike, and then I'm looking closer and it looks irregular when you're looking at it. Oh, I'll just get the last bit out of here. A plastic screw. So I'm looking at the needle, and the first thing that struck me was just what was special about it, because almost initially it looked like it was a square needle. And if you look very closely at the needle, where's a pen? Well, there's a pen. It comes with a pen, presumably for drawing tattoos. When you look at the needle, at the end of it, you've got the shaft coming down, and then you've got a cluster of very fine needles. In the case of this one, it's about 5 needles, and up to about there, they're soldered, and then the solder just goes all the way up, and then it's soldered onto that. So it's a bit kind of off-center, you know, it's just a clump of these tiny needles. But if you look at the end through a microscope, like I did, it looks like, in this case, it looks like a very organised group of 5 needles. And that was when I saw that, I immediately went online and had a look around for needle shapes, and it turns out that you get various formations of the needles, sort of either flat row or the staggered rows, and then the circles for all the different effects. And that also led me to find another seller, a much higher profile sort of professional kit seller, which costs considerably more than £20. This kit costs about $400, and it comes with a huge selection of needles, big, large area, clusters of needles for filling in large areas. And I guess that if you're a professional, then you probably appreciate this more. But it starts from just a single needle, which I thought, you know, 2 needles were just a single needle, but they're not. And in this case, this one, it seems to be a rotary mechanism. It's not anything like this older fashioned style. It seems to be a motor that drives the needle up and down, and that seems to be an area of controversy. Some people like the rotating version, and some people like the magnetic version. But this is quite a complex system. The power supply alone, you know, it says it comes with a deal. Now I'm guessing comes with a Hawkhead 90 milligrams box of needles, your choice. It doesn't come with the touchscreen power supply, which itself costs $420. That's like, oh blimey. Yeah, that's for the professionals, definitely. But anyway, we're not professionals. I'm certainly not a professional. So it comes with these needles, and it turned out, looking at them, that they do have different names like 5RL and 3RS, and it's different shapes of clusters of needles. So some of these are the little straight clusters, some of the round clusters, and so on. So interesting that it comes with all these. So to put this into the gun in the first place, this goes up here, and you can set the height of it by just locking it off like this. The needle has this little top hat grommet goes through. As the needle comes, it just comes this loop round the end, and you put this little top hat grommet through, and then it goes on to what's called the armature, the bit that vibrates up and down. So this needle then goes down the inside of that shaft, and the top hat grommet goes on with the sort of flat side in towards the metal armature. And that's where the little rubber band comes in, because the rubber band is used to stop that needle popping off there. The rubber band goes round like this, which seems quite odd really, but I suppose it works. It's simple. It's all kind of hygienic, everything's disposable. I'm guessing, I'm not sure how deep tattoos normally go. I'd guess probably just a millimetre, probably. So I'm guessing that if you plunge this little armature down to extend the needle out fully, and then you'd probably just adjust this so it was just basically about protruding by 1 millimetre. But again, I'm not a tattoo expert. I'm sure that there are lots of tattoo experts watching this video and they can chime in. Oh, one of the other things that came with this, I just randomly picked this up, vitamin A and vitamin D ointment for applying after you've tattooed yourself or your friend or whatever. So the operation of the device itself is very old-fashioned. It's very reminiscent of, let me see if I can find a picture I dug up earlier, a bell clapper. The bell clapper is a springy metal strip. It's got the bell clapper that strikes the bell, and it's got the 2 coils and a contact there. And when you apply power, initially, because it's springy, it's actually up against the contact, and current flows through the contact, through the armature, and through the coils. And that causes the coils to attract the clapper down, and in doing so it pulls the contact away, and then that de-energizes them. So it basically creates a continuously reciprocating action. It basically, in the case of this, it rings the bell. In the case of this one, it is really just the same circuit. It's strange that it's so old-fashioned. We've got the armature plate here. I'll just lift this up so you can see it. We've got the 2 coils. We've got the yoke at the back, which is a iron plate that sort of shunts the back of the coils to increase the magnetic field strength. So when it's in its rest state with the needle up, this contact here is touching this adjustable contact you can screw up and down. It's got a wee plastic locking screw, which I guess that's what this extra screw is for as well. So this plastic locking screw is used to stop that just vibrating loose. So initially when you apply power to this, the coils, this contact will be up against that, and the coils will be energized and start pulling down, pull the contact away, and then it returns, and it just basically creates this sort of vibrating action. And I see this capacitor here, a bipolar capacitor. It's not polarized, although it is actually fed with DC. And the reason for that is, two reasons I'm guessing. Firstly, it comes up, when it makes contact with that contact, it will charge the capacitor before the inertia of the sort of magnets can kick in. And that will give it a burst of energy to make sure that that goes down with decent force to actually puncture the skin. And it'll also avoid people getting too many tingles off this, because it's a vibrating inductive load. So without the capacitor, you could get quite a nasty zing off this. I mean, okay, you're wearing your rubber gloves, and to be fair, when you see the way the needle's put in, it's a plastic housing, and it's the metal needle is going down the inside the plastic housing, and it's got the rubber grommet here, which is just as well because it is connected electrically to this. And the rubber band holds it back, so there's no electrical connection between the needle and the body. Now, I do see metal hand grips available for these, but I don't know if they're designed for use with the inserts as well as insulators, because otherwise, if you were giving someone a tattoo and it was piercing through the skin, the skin is a sort of highly resistive layer, and it would penetrate through to the juicy, sensitive interior layer, the conductive layer, so you wouldn't really want it connected electrically to this. So it's quite interesting. We've got the ink, we've got these little ink cups, which I've seen frames, but I guess you just probably have it loose on your bench. I couldn't work out what the O-rings were for until I had to look it up online. That's where I also found what the rubber band's for. The O-ring, and there's one just coiled loop that's actually a broken O-ring under here, is just tucked under this upper contact here, and it's just to give it extra rigidity. I'm not 100% sure why. That's probably something that the seasoned tattoo artists are probably going to appreciate more than someone like me who doesn't normally use this, but it probably changes the feel in some way. Maybe stops that vibrating too much, dampens it, so that you get a nice decisive repeat action off this. So you get lots of little top hat grommets. You get your 3 O-rings. I'll just put all these out the way, in fact. I'll put them back in their box. That sort of makes sense. And you get this pen, which I guess you draw your tattoo on with. What should I draw? Should I draw a wee heart, or should I... No, let's draw cock and balls. That's inappropriate. Yeah, I'm not sure why I did that. That was inappropriate. This is why I wouldn't get a job as a tattoo artist. So let's... Right, well that's a bit awkward. Continuing on. I can't believe I just did that. Anyway, the rest of the video is going to have a cock and balls on my hand just for no good reason at all. I'm going to resist the temptation and now tattoo that on permanently. I'm hoping that's going to come off with a solvent or something, because that's going to be awkward otherwise. Anyway, moving on. Let's try the unit out, and then we'll take it all to bits. That's what we do in this channel. So this is the foot pedal. This goes in, one bit goes onto the frame, because literally the electrical connections are through the frame. One goes through the frame and one goes onto this little brass thing down here. It's very retro, it's very steampunk, and I can't help feeling that a lot of the reason these are so popular in this style is because it looks the part. It really looks like the old tattoo machine. And although you get more modern ones, you get stylish ones where it's all lovely and hidden, people kind of want to see this, and it makes that particular vibrating, harsh noise that you expect from a tattoo parlour. So that hooks in like that, and also unhooks quite easily, which is an odd connection arrangement. And this will this goes into, oh blimey, I'm guessing that's got a wee arrow pointing down to something, so that's going to be the foot pad, but I'm really not sure. Look at the graphics in this, they're really not that helpful, are they? That looks like a set of headphones. Right, let's plug that in there. What's the worst could happen? And this does have an arrow pointing down at a surface, so I guess that's the foot pedal. Not sure what this is to be set at. And I'll need my mains lead and a death adapter. So let's plug this into the power supply first before I plug it into the death adapter, just in case it does go bang after finding solder rolling about inside it. Death adapter. Right, the blue LED is glowing very dimly. Not sure if it's supposed to be bright or not. Pedal. Nothing happening. Oh! That's not very forceful. Oh, that's better. I don't care much the foot pedal much. Okay, I guess if you're standing it probably helps. I'll put that down then. Yeah, that's better. So I don't know how much difference it'll make. Just I guess once you've wound it out too much, it'll stop, and then when you wind that in, okay. And the knob in the front has a modest range of control. I thought initially that the knob in the front was going to actually vary the frequency and that this was just going to be a DC magnet without the interrupter. I thought this might just be a strokes at a limit type thing like that. But it turns out that the thing does appear to just be providing variable DC. And the blue LED in the front, oh, where's the pedal? Oh, I've just lifted the pedal off the ground. The blue LED in the front just lights up when you press the pedal. Right, so we've ascertained it works. Let's take it to bits. So disconnect that. Pull the plug out the death adapter and just throw that in the ground actually out the way. I'll disconnect this little strange springy connector. And the pedal. Let's get the pedal out of the way first. Let's take a look inside the pedal. Screwdriver. From looking at the videos on the internet, it was very interesting. One of the most useful videos was a young lady tattooing herself, which was very odd. Right, okay, so this is this spring is held in place by that indent in the lid and this indent here, and it's what basically looks like one of those little clicky switches you'd find in the back of a torch flashlight, a decent beefy flashlight, but it's a non-latching. And it's just clipped into a little plastic frame here, which looks as though it's got optional mounting positions. I guess this might just be a standard foot switch used for other applications. Okay, so not too much to that. One other thing that became very apparent is that the process of tattooing, I couldn't work out if this was where you put ink or not. And I mean, if you're a specialist in tattooing, you'll be able to maybe say in the comments, but the only reference thing I could find was that you're supposed to dip it into the ink pot and then activate it so that the reciprocating action actually drew some ink in. And it makes you realise that's the part of the point for all those clusters of the needles. A, for covering a large area, and possibly for holding a decent amount of ink. And I suppose that ultimately some of it comes into this sort of well at the top here, which is just sort of like an open sort of like board. Also, it appears that there is a major science to applying the ink, because you can't just go on like that and start doing your outline around your cock and balls. If you do it incorrectly, if you pause too much in an area, you start gouging and damaging the skin and scarring it. So it requires continuous action, and you have to make sure the ink is flowing properly, because if it doesn't, then it's not going to be putting the ink under the skin. So it's not just down to the graphic art. There's quite a lot of skill and understanding of how the ink's going to behave on the needles and how it's going to inject into particular types of skin. And I guess that's partly why you get the fake skin to practice on. And then, of course, then your friends and yourself, I guess. So, taking the tattoo machine to bits, or should I take the power supply? Let's take the power supply to bits first and save the juicy, interesting bits here that comes bits afterwards, because I'm quite intrigued. I didn't take too much look at the circuitry in here other than to note that those big balls of solder were just far too big given the clearance between the mains connections and the casing, which is unearthed. Nice enough case. I'm not sure what sort of power this puts out. I'll try that later. I'll put the tattoo machine on my bench power supply and we'll see what sort of current it takes. So, here's the power supply. And it's got a switch mode driver here. Reactor Micro RM6203. Not come across that one before. So it's got the mains come in, goes through a fuse, goes through a bridge rectifier, then to the smoothing capacitor, quite a big 22 microfarad 400 volt smoothing capacitor. I see a cluster of components here across. It looks like it's got the auxiliary winding partly for monitoring the other side of the. I see an opto-isolator here. And I see the diode and capacitor here that would allude to that being the power supply. Often with these switch mode power supply chips, there's a resistor initially, trickle charges the power supply. I'm guessing that's what those resistors are. Oh yes, very likely. And they trickle charge up a capacitor until it's just enough to actually strike it, just trigger it. And as soon as it starts trigger it and fires the transformer once, it then starts feeding current back to itself via that diode and the auxiliary winding in the power supply. So very typical of a switch mode power supply chip. The separation between the main side and low voltage side, particularly for something that you're physically holding and applying through people's skin, is not very good. There's about 2 millimeters there. It really isn't. It's not great separation at all. There is an opto-isolator. I see the big fat diode shoved between the connectors there. The opto-isolator has a... Now, the opto-isolator appears to be going down to the pin of the switch mode power supply. Oh no, it's going right through to the... It's going through to one of the power rails, and the other one's going to the other side of the transformer. So, that really is, the feedback is just a Zener diode in series with the opto-isolator without a resistor. Seems quite odd. So as soon as the voltage rises on this side, so it's setting a standard voltage at this side that it shuts this the primary side off. So it starts off with a standard voltage, and then it looks like it's got a 5-pin voltage regulator here with a buck regulator presumably, with this choke here to actually set the output. And then I'm guessing the output is just switched with one of these two jacks are probably basically in series, so that when you press the pedal it puts power out to the tattoo gun. Then you can vary the voltage. That's reasonable enough. I'll take a wee look at that later on, a wee bit more exploration, maybe. The tattoo gun itself, the most interesting bit, this thing is it's a work of art. Look at it, it's really neat. I just like it because of its slightly dark connections, and I think that's what a lot of people will be sticking to this style for, because it has that look that you'd expect of a tattoo machine. So let's get the needle back out before I stab myself with it. And let's take it to all its component pieces, as one does. So where's the... I've just put the Allen keys away, haven't I? Yes, I have. Comes with a wee mini toolkit, that's nice. Right, so which bit, what we take apart first? Now, one of the connections goes on to the chassis, and I see that this vibrating, the bit that plunges the needle up and down is actually one of the connections here. That's the physical contact that goes onto the bottom of this, so this must be isolated. And I do see sort of rubber or plastic washers here, and the wire going down to the capacitor. Can't see the value capacitor, I shall look at that afterwards. So let's start by taking off that plate then, because I don't think it's attached to anything else. So off comes the armature plate, noting it's got those two little screws. Oh, I didn't actually need to take them out because it's got a wee notch in it. Okay. And you can also see that strange, the way they've just rammed that rubber O-ring under there just to put extra rigidity in this, I'm guessing. I'm not 100% sure, it's quite odd. I could take this screw out here, this little plastic screw. And this little contact, it's all retro and very Victorian, very nice for that. And I can take that off and we'll see what these electrical insulators are like. Oh right, okay. The electrical insulators are... Ooh. Have I just dropped one? I thought there was another one there. Anyway, the electrical insulators appear to be hard plastic washers with a little lip inside that goes down into the actual metal here. And that one too, presumably, let's see, that one was going up to the contact, that will be going to one end of the coil, so this will be going to the other end of the coil, so let's take that off as well. And it's got a little plastic insulator on both sides as well. It's very neat, I like this. So I like the brassy effect and the sort of contacts. It's very retro, it's very steampunky indeed. The coils. One screw, no washers. Oh, there's a little other plastic thing that I misplaced earlier. I'll just put them up there so they're all together. Alright, and there's the little yoke plate at the back. The yoke plate is used to bridge the two magnetic coils together. Oh, a whole lot's come out now. So that couples them magnetically so the two poles are attracting the plate down. So that capacitor is a non-polarised electrolytic. You can tell that because it's got the rib at both ends. Although it does have a negative pointing to one end, but maybe that's just because they've used a standard packaging. Richie. 63 volt, 33 microfarad. I did notice part of the culture, I guess, when I was looking for information on how to put them together and it said how to assemble a tattoo machine, I found an annoying number of videos that it would start off, you know, the video would say how to assemble a tattoo machine, and you'd go on and it would be the person with the black rubber gloves on their tattoo and say, to learn how to assemble it, you want to come on our courses. And it's like, oh, fuck off. But one of the course options they gave was the extended, if you paid more for the luxury course, they'd show you coil winding as well. You could wind your own coils. So there's obviously a whole culture behind these. Isn't that neat? This is just really nice. I like this. I like it just visually. Let's take everything to bits. Is that threaded in? I think it is threaded in as well. Yeah, this is you know what? This is a nice ornament, just as it is. The whole thing is just very. It's the sort of thing that would just look nice sitting on a mantelpiece, just because it's got that image of this sort of bad boy, bad girl tattoo image. That's nice. In a way, I'm glad now that I didn't go for the British sellers one, because it just looks like folded metal compared to this, which is the sort of cast one. This is probably more in keeping with the ones that they'd probably use in China, since China does love its tattoos. China and Japan, the whole Oriental thing that they do like their tattoos. That's neat. That's very neat. So yeah, that's quite nice. I like that. It's just for what it is. It's quite an interesting device, and it was worth getting to take to bits. So now I've finished reassembling that, I've had another look at this, and there are certain elements to it that I'm not overly thrilled in, to be honest, other than the separation. It's a very odd arrangement. I thought the pedal would just have been in series with the output, and I'm not sure if it's because it's not a super high current thing, but it might have exceeded the current rating of that wee switch. When this thing's run at about 9 volts, I ran it in the bench power supply, I just stuck the lead straight onto it. At 9 volts it drew about 370 milliamps, and at 16 volts it drew about 800 milliamps. This thing is capped, the diode here, it's capped about 18 volts, is supplied to the low voltage side of the circuitry. And the regulator then varies between just over 1 volt to about 17 volts, so pretty much just 1 volt off each rail. However, when you press the pedal, it actually seems to be driving an enable pin on this switching power supply, this little buck regulator. And there's a resistor here that goes through the LED and normally pulls that pin up high, which is why it glows very gently. That's just the leakage current into the enable pin. But when you press the pedal, it shunts it to ground, I think. Yes, it does. Which then enables that, which then drives the voltage output to the machine connector. But that means that if you plug the machine into the wrong pedal, because this isn't very well labelled, if you plug the machine into there, because it looks like a wee needle, but it's actually the wee arrow pointing at the pedal, then because of its fairly low impedance, it looks like the pedal's pressed. So it enables and the blue LED lights, and it puts the supply voltage out. And then when you press the pedal, it just shorts the output. There's no protection, it just basically short circuits the output completely when you press the pedal and passes quite a lot of current through the pedal. I tested that. It managed to maintain, for the resistance of the pedal, it managed to maintain a modest voltage even when the pedal was fully pressed and shorting it out, so that's not that great a design at all. It's just a silly thing really. I'm not sure why they did that. It's odd. But yes, other than the slightly shonky power supply, which is neat enough, but has that low clearance and had the blobs of solder rolling about inside it, and it is really such low clearance that they've mounted this regulator, they've sat it right down onto the circuit board. But even with that, depending on which way you put this in, which side, the tolerance is so close that if you put it in from one way, it just hits and it won't go in. You actually have to put it in from the other side, and it just seems to have that slight variation of tolerance that it just skims past the metal. So, odd, but an interesting device nonetheless. So certainly a conversation point, a talking point. I wouldn't recommend giving each other tattoos. I think that's something best left to seasoned artists. But having said that, if you wanted to, I suppose you could get the fake skin. You can buy the practice skin you get off eBay, and there's no harm in actually having a go at tattooing just to see how hard it is and how to set the equipment up. But it certainly wins lots of points for stylishness. It's quite a nice gadget.